Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we have another patch rundown video for us, and that's because patch 1.6 dropped this morning. And this is going to come alongside the new DLC The Furious Wow on September 3rd. So let's take a quick look through some of these. Now, a lot of these changes I already covered in the preview videos for The Furious Wow, so we'll be skimming through some of those. If you're interested for some of these detailed changes, definitely go check out some of the preview videos. I'll point you guys in the right direction as we go through the patch, and I'll put a link to the full playlist down below as well. So some of the main changes in patch 1.6 is the addition of Shi Xie as a playable character. His preview video came out earlier today on the channel, so you can definitely go check that out for how he looks in the 190 and 194 start. There's some front-end rework as in the faction select screen, and there's a rework of the entire map. We have an entire video on showcasing the map led by Emperor Liu Hong, and you can definitely check that out in the preview as well. There are new gate battles, and we showcase that in a video as well. And there's balance changes across all our characters and to the battle. That's the main coverage we'll have in this rundown because previously I wasn't able to show any of that. And there's the new Juggernaut unit, and for those of you who are curious about how this unit will work, the Gate Pass battle showcase that I did a week ago on the Kui Pass, in that video we used the Juggernaut at the end pretty effectively to block the gate, and it's a very powerful unit that's very situational. And of course, with any patch update, we have a plethora of bug fixes. And there's this huge warning about pre-patch 1.6 save compatibility. And for any of you who are currently in the middle of a campaign, those campaigns will not apply the new map changes when you get the patch update. You can still play those games, but there will be bugs, as in some battles with settlements are going to spawn different locations, and maybe even a gate pass battle will show up because you already programmed those location codes into the game, and if you fight a battle on the old map with that location code, it's going to spawn a new battle map. So there's going to be a lot of issues if you keep playing your old campaign, so wrap up those campaigns and tempted to not start any new ones before September 3rd, where all this new map will be added into the game. There are some mechanics and system that are updated to fix for the new map system, and that includes Sun Ce's ambition mechanic as well as Liu Bu's greatest warrior mechanic. We'll be showing both of these a little bit in-game very soon in this patch rundown, and just to clarify, we're not getting any new things added to these. They're just modified to work with the new map names. And Liu Bu's greatest warrior did not get any new additional characters to hunt down. This is simply a change to be compatible with the map. Bandit Network, which is entirely based on the commandery map system for all three bandit factions, obviously need to be reworked with the addition of some new commanderies as well as the split up of some old ones. So that's going to be a modification that we'll also show a bit later in this patch rundown when the section comes. And obviously, if you're using any mods, those mods that are using the old region files and province data will be no longer functional, and they need to be updated by whoever made the mod for you to enjoy that effect moving forward. So pretty much this is a very, very big patch, and this is one of the biggest changes that the game has seen since launch, and a lot of things are not going to work like before. So continuing on with the main feature, today I already showcased Shi Xie with his new unique faction mechanic, so I'm going to save us a bit of time since this video is going to be rather long. And for those of you who are interested in seeing how this new faction play out, definitely go check out the new faction preview video that came out earlier today. And it's mainly about some notable characters here. He has three brothers, Shi Yi, Shi Hui, which is his son. In-game is Shi Wei. And then you have Shi Wu, which in-game is now his son. His family tree is really messed up right now. There are tickets put in. It's going to change, hopefully. And we're going to see his family correct in-game. And correct in the patch note, because this should be W-E-I instead of H-U-I. And honestly, the word is pronounced another Y-I, but that's another thing. I talked about it in the preview video. And we're also going to be delaying the Shi Xie lore series, which should have came out during this time slot because this patch note came out and there's simply just no time. Too many things to do. So the Shi Xie lore series will officially be tomorrow and the day after Thursday, Friday. So it'll be Wednesday and Friday this week. We'll have them out during the 9 p.m. Eastern time slot, and there'll be 2 episodes covering the entirety of Shi Xie's life from beginning till the end of his son. It's basically the entire history of the Shi clan in 2 episodes. So look out for that. For front end rework, we talked about the new campaign selection screen and how they're separated on the left, and there's timeline still, and you have the map hidden with the characters. You can switch between them, and there's now a faction specialization tablet as well as a character specialization tablet here on the right. So we kind of already seen that in many of our preview videos. And the map update, beautiful map, extended down south, down southwest, as well as a bit of extension in the northeast as well. And there's a lot of small county changes, especially around here. We have Pengcheng being modified with Xiapi being added into the game, and some other changes down south as well. So if you want to know the details, go check out our new map overview. And moving on, we have gate battles, which are these special commandery settlements that are on the map. These are small settlements, and they're basically a gate that's holding a narrow choke on two sides. Depending on which side you're attacking, you'll be showing up the attacking side from that side, and this is a two-sided fort, and the defender just have to hold and wipe out the attacker. The attacker have to go through the fort and capture the capture point inside or wipe out the defenders. So it's going to be a very intense new battle type, should be very interesting. And they talk about a lot of the new map changes I just mentioned, and there are new region names added in. So every single county is going to have a unique name, and it's going to help tell a lot of the historical narrative of the story. And then for existing content, some of the old commandery have been changed, some of the new resources have been moved around, and some of the new mountains in the south has been moved. And they want to move more mountains because one of the gates in the wrong place, namely Hulao Gate, because Songshan is in the wrong place. So they talked about it here, and they talked about it in the previous development blog, which we covered on the channel as well. So once we get a future update, probably the northern expansion pack, we'll probably see more gates added in and some more modification for the geographic features so that they match more closely with historical ones. So it's a nice change to see that they're still going to go for those changes. Right now, they don't want to break all the internal saves and delay the game's launch, so they're just going to keep Mount Song in the wrong place and Hulao Gate slightly too far to the east to really defend Luoyang. It should be slightly closer to Luoyang. That way you can actually use it as a defensive structure. And the new characters. There's not many of them because this patch and this update in DLC is really about the non-Man factions down south. So you get a ton of units, you get a ton of characters from them, both in the 6 unique artwork as well as some of the artworks for all the generic characters. So on the Han side, we are kind of light. We have Wei Yan, which is a fan favorite, of course. He is added in for Liu Bei's faction. And he's going to spawn quite late in campaign because he spawns quite late in history. So you're not going to see him right away in your campaigns, but for some of the longer campaigns, he will spawn and be a very nice addition to some of the late game roster when your older generals start dying. Now, of course, you can have timeless mode turned on and you don't have to worry about dying. And some of the details of timeless mode will be shared a bit later in this patch note. And then Xun Yu is also added in. And he was a very powerful political figure from the Xun family as well. And during Dong Zhuo's rise to power, he did try to plot to have him assassinated. The famous story of Cao Cao giving up 7-gem dagger to assassinate Dong Zhuo is actually from Xun You's story. Xun Yu actually tried to do that, not with a 7-gem dagger, but just with a regular dagger. And he got captured by Dong Zhuo, failed in that assassination attempt, and he was put in prison. But luckily, Dong Zhuo was killed, and then he was released, and he eventually joined Cao Cao's faction and became a very key strategist for him. So it's nice to see him added into the game. His ability is not that great. It's ancient wisdom, which allow you to see through forests. Might be useful in the south, given there's a lot of jungles added in, but overall, not the strongest ability in the game. And speaking of abilities, Wei Yan has Reckless Strike, which sacrifices some of your own health to deal a lot of damage in duels. So very interesting trade-off with mechanic for damage. This is nothing new. I think it's been in the game, and we see this on a lot of non-mine characters as well. And lastly, we have Li Ru, who I misrepresented as Li Su in our last preview video for the Kui Gate Pass. Now, he is advisor to Dong Zhuo, and he provided a lot of good advice for him. In the Romance of Three Kingdoms, he is portrayed as Dong Zhuo's son-in-law, but historically he was not. In the game, he is given quite a unique setup. He is a strategist, but he has the health of a sentinel, which is similar to Zhou Yu's stat. And he also has a special ability called Hold Firm, which will increase his melee evasion over time. So he could be a quite good combatant in army. He can be sent in to fight even though he's a strategist. Give him a good sword and he can do some damage. Now, next we're going to move on to balance changes. So this is the big bulk of this patch note that has been kept in the secret from everyone. And I'm going to showcase this in game. So we're going to jump in game and we're going to see every faction changes. We'll run through all the changes and some of my view on them, and we'll come back to the patch note afterward. So see you guys then. Alrighty, as we jump into game to show off this portion of the patch note, we do have to note that we'll be going from faction to faction to take a look at the changes for the career traits for each of these characters, as well as the new building changes, because the building changes was not very descriptive in the patch note, so we'll be showcasing it here in game. So first thing first, we have Cao Cao, and we have his new change to his faction bonus given on his background, Strategic Mastermind. Now there is minus 25% redeployment cost discount just on the background itself. This will stack with flexibility, so you get 50% from Cao Cao right away, so you can remaneuver your troop and redeploy them cheaply playing as Cao Cao, and summon new generals on the field with their retinue attached at half price just with Cao Cao himself. And if you add on a bonus of 25% from flexibility from 2 more characters, and you'll be at the free redeployment cost state very easily. You also have 15% recruitment cost for cavalry. This used to be a reduced 10% upkeep cost for cavalry. This is probably a buff in my opinion, because after patch 1.5 they consistently changed all recruitment and upkeep cost ratio to about 3.75. That is, the upkeep cost times 3.75 usually equal the recruitment cost, and they have stayed pretty much the same with that. And in this sense, a 15% decreased recruitment cost obviously isn't going to be as good in the long run as a 10% reduction to upkeep costs, because upkeep is forever as long as you have the unit on the field. So in direct income numbers, you're actually going to save less with this. But this will allow you to field more cavalries a bit earlier in your campaign, because sometimes recruiting these more expensive tiger and leopards are going to cost you much more. And later on in the patch note, we're going to see that tiger and leopards got a buff in terms of their armor, as well as a reduction to their cost in terms of their flat base cost. So it's going to add on to this 15%. You're basically going to have cheaper cavalry recruitment for Cao Cao. And lastly, the biggest change is the addition of +2 available spy positions. This is something that's quite unique, and it's going to give you a lot of interesting playstyles. But there's one thing I do want to note about this is not a very good advantage early on, because at our rank we can't spy, even though we have 2 additional spy slots. So we still would have to rank up our faction to the point where we will get our first spy, and then we get 2 additional ones because Cao Cao is our faction leader. So it doesn't speed up when we can get turncoats and when we can implement our spy in enemy factions, but it does increase the number of turncoats we can turn, as well as the number of spies we can send out, and kind of plays into the diplomatic setup of Cao Cao alongside his unique ability from his credibility resource, which triggers proxy wars and diplomatic relations. And what's most important, and that's not shown in the patch note, is the buildings. So the biggest changes to his faction unique building, the Tun Tian conscription building. And what it does now is it will give you the same food percentage that I did before, but local troops will gain a campaign movement range while in this commandery that has one of these buildings built. And it goes all the way up to 25%. So you can mobilize your troops, you can redeploy your troop faster. Cao Cao is very well known for his lightning war style and quick strike with his cavalry, so this kind of plays into that. And in addition to that, it gives a cost reduction to agriculture garrison building. So that is also a big bonus, 50%, as you can see here at the final tier. It starts out at 10% and moves its way up 10% at a time until it goes to 50%. And agricultural garrisons are basically the unique garrison versions of the farm, both the grain farm and the rice paddy farm, and that's largely unchanged. The only change here is the discount for military buildings also go up by 10% per level all the way till 50% on level 5, which is pretty big too, because if you contain this with a couple of other agricultural buildings, you can easily get to 80% cost reduction for military buildings, which will make some of your fringe farming utility commanderies quite easy and cheap to build. for going for a bunch of these military buildings, since they're all pretty nice for Cao Cao, especially down south. You'll get faction-wide replenishment rate from the rice paddies. You also get movement, you also get cost discount, and then from this building, sorry, the rice paddy version of the garrison. And then you would add in a Twin Tian conscription for more food, as the food bonus starts from tier 1. Previously, they used the basic level 1, 2, 3 from the base game and just give you special additional level 4 and level 5. So you couldn't see this bonus early on, but now for Cao Cao's faction, you'll be able to get extra food from tier 1. So you can technically have a food multiplier that also gives you faction-wide replenishment, that gives you some movement for those fringe commanderies. You can build a military forge there for items, you can build a military infrastructure there for an additional garrison, and then you would add another garrison in from your rice paddy garrison down south, which is giving you faction-wide replenishment as well as some good food production. So that's pretty much what changed with Cao Cao, and we're going to move on to Liu Bei next. Alrighty, and we're here for Liu Bei in the 194 start because I wanted to start out with some land because I had to showcase our new building. Our new change to the building. Let's do this right away because this is a big change from the Shuhan tax collection. Notice how this Shuhan tax collection still costs 0, but doesn't have any penalties. You have 85 to flat peasantry income, and you get militia replenishment rate. And I believe this is local commandery, so it's not faction-wide, and it does go up quite a bit. 15% militia replenishment, 260 peasantry income, no public water penalties. Because apparently, the people love Liu Bei. And that's reinforced furthermore with changes to his background bonus. He now has 100 points of faction support. So there will never be a faction support issue in the land you conquer, because everyone wants to be conquered by you. And you also get minus 50% upkeep for militia infantry. So this is the same from before, half price for militia infantry, but in addition to that, you get +3 starting rank for all militia recruit. Keyword here is recruit, because that means the cavalry versions, which do not get the upkeep cost discount, will also start out with rank 4, which is quite helpful. So your militias are going to start out the game stronger, and they're always going to be stronger, and you're also going to have cheaper upkeep costs. But this is also going to encourage strategies like disbanding units, because you start out with level 1 versions, and you want to get rid of these and just recruit new ones. Maybe even after you get understanding, then you get rank 5 units for all your militia infantry right away. So perhaps archer militia is going to make a comeback. But that's the only change to Liu Bei. It's a pretty significant one in terms of how you would play him. After the last round of militia nerfs, pretty much shied away from spamming militias on Liu Bei, but now I think we can go back to doing that, especially with both the changes to rank up and also the change to the new tax collection building, which is just amazing. Like, this is going to drive your early game income and reform strategy. You're almost guaranteed to go for this branch of the reform tree in the early going, because there's just no drawback to this building. It's just a solid free income, and you can spend your money on your militias, which are cheap, and then you can spam generals and kind of conquer in the beginning pretty easily with high replenishment rate on your troops as well. So that's Liu Bei for us, and moving on we have Sun Jian. Alrighty, and we're back in the 190 start for Sun Jian here, because we don't need to really change that to show the changes to his building, because we have a settlement to begin with, and the building is the mercenary outpost. So this building previously gave a discount to recruiting these mercenary captains and charges for recruiting mercenary captains, and that's still true. But the big change here is it increased the reduction given to mercenary retinue costs in general. So as we move up here, you can see the changes to the recruitment costs for these captain retinues. That's a minor change in my opinion. This isn't going to sway this building one way or the other. It's not a bad building in the past. You could have gone with this building as one of your 6th building, especially in commerce heavy commanderies, because you do get quite a nice boost with other bonuses attached as well. And if you build this one quite early for your 6th building, you also get a nice cost reduction, 10% in the beginning, for all your, starting at level 1, for all your learning and market building. So there was synergy here with the mercenary outpost before. Now it's just going to be a little bit better. And if we look at the character background, that's where the most change happened for Sun Jian's faction, and it's actually big changes. So we have 15% to campaign movement range. Before, this was 10%. So now you move faster because the land down south got quite a terrain overhaul and things become a little bit harder to move around. So 5% would help us out here. You also get cost to establish order in deserted settlements halved. So this means half price for taking over deserted counties and commanderies. So it used to be 4,000 for a county, 8,000 for a commandery settlement. Now it's going to be 2,000 and 4,000 for Sun Jian's faction. And given that there is quite a bit of deserted land in the southeastern portion of the map, this is definitely a big buff to Sun Jian's faction overall. And lastly, you get 25% recruitment and upkeep cost discount for mercenary retinue. This was just not here before. Previously on Sun Jian, it was 15% melee damage for shock cavalry, which doesn't really apply much for him, but this is a huge change. So now mercenary troops are cheaper to recruit, cheaper to upkeep. Upkeep portion's less important in my mind because sometimes you just want the mercenary for a temporary boost and you're just paying for the recruitment cost and you don't really care about upkeep because you're disbanding them right after. But now they're cheaper to do that and cheaper to keep if you want to keep them. So this is just a really big buff for Sun Jian's faction in my opinion. His mercenary units are already really strong. Now, not only do you have one of the best late game economies with 25% to all your harbor buildings for commerce, but now you also save money on taking over empty land. You also save money on recruiting and upkeeping the mercenary units. That is what makes you strong in the first place. And looking at the half price for settlements, this also might introduce some strategies where you might want to consider raising a settlement if the gold cost makes sense, right? Before, you really wanted to do that because you could take over commandery, downgrade it a bunch, it'll take you a bunch of turns, and you end up, saving money. But now you could probably raise it and leave every single level. So if you have like a level 4 city, or small city is level 4, I believe, you can sack it once and withdraw, make a bunch of money, and then repeat that until you raise it to nothing, and then you only pay about 4,000 to take it over. Maybe that's better now, but it will take a lot of time. So I don't know if you still go with that strategy, but perhaps that strategy is possible. So that wraps up Sun Jian, and we're going to move on to his son, Sun Ce. Alrighty, so we're here for Sun Ce's 194 start. That's when he's available to start anyways. Other than the flag change, his change is very, very minor. He's a chip off the old block, exactly like his dad. The only difference is if we look at his personal background, the little conqueror, you still have the 100% charge bonus for cavalry, that stayed. 15% melee attack for shock cavalry also stayed, but also half price to take over empty deserted settlements. So that is very strong. Now these bonuses do reinforce faction playstyle, but because it's on their background, if you take this character and recruit him into your faction or confederate him and put him in one of the court positions where it's considered prime minister, heir, or faction leader, you will enjoy these bonuses like before too. So this is quite a nice change to the game overall. But aside from this, the change to the mercenary outpost building is exactly the same as dad, so we can be done with the Sun clan now. And now we're going to move on to Prince of Chen, Liu Chong. Alrighty, we're loaded up here for Prince of Chen in the 182 campaign, and the big changes here are actually on himself. So if we look at Liu Chong here, Prince of Chen bonus, you now have a 20% recruitment cost discount for Chen units, that is the Chen Royal Guard and the Chen Peacekeepers, both extremely strong faction unique units, and now with 20% cost discount, you can get more of them earlier. The upkeep is still going to be expensive, but they're going to be well worth it. And in addition to that, you get 15% range damage for crossbow. This is a 5% increase. And crossbows in general got buffed, as we will see later on in this patch note. So that's going to be a good thing. Liu Chong is only going to get stronger. And you also get +3 rank for all range unit. So that also makes sense. And there's also some bug fixes which will fix the achievements with his trophies. So that's also a nice addition. So this is definitely one of the factions you could revisit. Now sadly, this is also one of those factions without a unique building, so there's nothing more to talk about, and let's move on to Gongsun Zan. Alrighty, and we're here in the 190 start for Gongsun Zan, and Gongsun Zan got pretty big buffs in my opinion. So first off, let's look at his building, because he does have a unique one. Military government. So military government now plays more of a focused role in terms of how much military building discount, similar to what we've seen with Cao Cao's faction. So you see that at tier 5 you get minus 50% construction to all military buildings, at tier 1 is 10%. It's kind of out of line given that it's not a green building, so it doesn't follow Wuxin synergies because it is a yellow building after all, but since it's called military government, we're going to let that slide. And in addition to that, you also gain additional bonuses to mustering turns, so minus 3 mustering turn at top tier, which is helpful. You do get your troops a little bit faster. Technically, I believe you have up to 8 mustering turn discount. That's instant mustering. I think that's how it worked. But this is going to speed up your mustering by quite a bit. It's going to give you about 10% extra replenishment on top of your current replenishment rate for a newly mustered troop. So I think that's going to help you out quite a bit. You also get the same +2 rank to cavalry recruits, public order, and income through all sources. That's still the same. And remember these numbers because this is going to come in quite helpful later on. It's 2 different versions. One's corruption reduction, which doesn't have it, but the Baima officers or the White Horse officers are going to synergize quite well with our new background bonus from the Iron Fist General, which gives us 25% post-battle loot income, which is very useful. This is really underestimated in the game. You fight a lot in the game through the campaign, and to have this as a faction-wide bonus is definitely a big boost to your economy. You also get 25% recruitment cost discount for ranged cavalry units, which are basically your faction unique cavalry units. And then you also get +3 starting rank for all cavalry units. So add that up with your unique building, you start out with +5 rank, plus whatever skill bonus you might have. You don't have it on Gongsun Zan, but let's say you make Zhao Yun one of your heirs, then you get understanding for another couple of ranks. You could potentially recruit, level 10 troops on all your cavalry unit with Gongsun Zan. That's not very hard to do. You already have +5 from a building and your faction-wide bonus. You only need +9 to achieve that. So 4 more officers in your 7 prime minister and heir spots that has understanding. Not the hardest thing to do. So that is pretty much Gongsun Zan's change, and I think it's going to make him a bit helpful. In terms of patch note fixes, later on we're going to see that his court got fixed in that his inspectors will drop to the administrator role when you become an emperor, and they won't simply disappear. So that's actually a huge bonus because you pretty much get 5 additional administrators early on, and you get to keep them when you become emperor, whereas previously they would go away. So Gongsun Zan does make sense now as one of the recommended starting factions for all the time frames. So that's pretty much it with him. And next we're going to talk about Dong Zhuo. Alrighty, we're loaded up here for Dong Zhuo's 190 start, and as a trend with this balance change, it really shouldn't be called a balance change. It's basically a refocus of every faction. Everyone got buffs, so everyone's stronger now, and everyone's more focused on what makes them special. So Dong Zhuo's faction, a couple things. There's no changes to faction unique building. The conscription building still does exactly the same. All the changes are on the character itself. The Cruel Tyrant. So previously this gave reduced 1 turn mustering turn and plus morale by 9 when attacking. Now we get something much more different. We get 25% to post-battle loot income, which, as I mentioned before, is a lot better than you would expect. But there is a difference here. In-game it says 25%, but on the patch note it says 50%. So I'm going to go by the in-game amount. 25% makes sense. That's the amount that Gongsun Zan got. So I think it's a typo on the patch note. So this nice thing, we pull up the game to see this. Now of course they could change the game to match the patch note. I'm not sure which one is exactly wrong, but that's the major change in terms of income. In terms of unit, his focus is on the Xiliang cavalries. So they are shock cavalry units, thus you get 15% recruitment cost discount for shock cavalry units, as well as 15% melee damage for shock cavalry unit. So as you can see, every faction's more focused on their unique playstyle, which is quite nice. And in addition to that, this is another big change. When your intimidation is overwhelming, that is between 70 and 100, what happens is all your units faction-wide will gain scare. That is very, very strong. So pretty much all your unit will inflict, I believe, 4 morale hits on enemies in combat. So that is going to make up for a lot of power differences between units, even on higher difficulty level. Because if you hit an enemy with night battle, with ambush, with fire, with arrows, with cavalry, and then you add on scare, they're going to rout. And you're going to win a lot of battles this way. So being intimidating and giving this scare is actually pretty strong buff to Dong Zhuo's faction, and it makes sense. Because Dong Zhuo came in with these Xiliang cavalries and put the fear in everyone, even though Dong Zhuo didn't have the most men at the time. So that's pretty much it for Dong Zhuo's faction, and we'll be moving on to the man who kills him, Liu Bu. Alrighty, and we're loaded up in the 194 Liu Bu start, and he didn't get many changes. So first of all, a lot of you have asked me about any changes to Greatest Warrior, and the answer is no. There are some patch changes to make sure that you can complete the achievement, but there are no additional changes for the tribes of the south. None of the Namang warriors made it into the list because Liu Bu probably doesn't care that they exist. They're not someone that he needs to kill. And the only change we have is on the character. So if we come in here, once again, it's a focus on his faction uniqueness. And for him, once again, it's going to be about those shock cavalries. So 15% cost discount is really the main change. The +3 morale in enemy territories and the 15% melee damage for all shock cavalries are still the same with him from before. So not a big change. And we're going to talk about some big changes. We're going to have to talk about the Yuan clan. So they're next with Yuan Shu. Alrighty, we're loaded back in for Yuan Shu in the 190 start. I thought I'd never have to see his face again, but he has quite a bit of change to his faction, and some of you might think this one is actually a nerf, but I think it's fine. So the biggest change here is it used to be, for his ambitious power monger, 25% increase to commerce and industry, as well as upkeep cost for enemy spies of 15 points. Those, not upkeep costs, undercover costs. So those were his old bonuses. Now you can see they're completely different. So instead of getting an income boost to your commerce and industry, you get a 25% construction cost discount for resource settlements. And I believe resource settlements are your counties. So that's actually a big boost of cost reduction because county upgrades tend to be very expensive. And 25% cost discount is a pretty good bonus to have, and it kind of makes sense because Yuan Shu is historically known to run down places, overspend on lavish constructions, and tax very heavily, run down every single commandery he ever commanded into. So giving him a 25% boost to income doesn't make a lot of sense from a historical sense, and giving him a cost reduction actually also doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe a cost increase because he likes to spend lavishly might make more sense, but that would be just a straight up nerf, and we don't want to see that for Yuan Shu, of course. And speaking of a focus on his faction unique playstyle, he has infantry units that are really bad, so now we can recruit those for cheaper, and they also have a 15%, well not 15%, but a 15-point charge bonus for all units. Now this small amount on cavalry is not going to make a big difference, but on infantry, where they have at most 80 charge bonus, 15 point is going to be a pretty big boost for you. So it's going to reinforce the playstyle of running your shieldless sword infantry into the enemy to die, and hopefully we'll see that for some Yuan Shu players. And there's another big change to reinforce his cost reduction in terms of building to make up for the loss of income, is that his new Zhong administration building, or technically not new, but the new bonus on that is you get learning, economic, and market building, so purple and blue. So industry and commerce, like before, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. So if you have a pretty good legitimacy income, which you should now as Yuan Shu, because there is a patch change later on we'll talk about in terms of his faction rank, which we might as well show now. You can actually get pretty good legitimacy income late game by yourself. You can afford these buildings, and they can make your construction for the upgraded inn, private workshop, and state workshop much cheaper. 50% is a big deal, especially for inn buildings, because you get 80% and then get another high expertise administrator in that commandery, which you should. That's free upgrades for your blue building, and most likely free upgrade for your purple building as well. So that's a pretty strong bonus, and the 60% to all sources is obviously pretty good. It does open up potentially some new build templates for Yuan Shu's faction. So it doesn't actually hurt him that much by taking away the 25% faction-wide income bonus. This isn't half bad. And let's just take a look at his legitimacy with rank. It used to be you get 2 points of legitimacy at all rank, and that's how much you get passively. Now it's 2 at noble, it's 4 at second marquis, 6 at marquis, 8 at duke, and 10 at king. That's very good. That's a lot of legitimacy. That's going to make Yuan Shu's faction a lot easier to play, because legitimacy is actually really hard to gain. And if you think about it, we talked about this strategy when we did his early game guide you can buy legitimacy easily in the early game through trade. You just have to spend a lot of your cash to do so. And it's going to be worth it because you can easily get 200 points of prestige from your legitimacy very easily early on if you buy, let's say, 3 faction worth of legitimacy. And if you get that early 200 points of prestige on top of potentially gaining the seal from trade and also upgrading some of your buildings, you can hit Duke very, very early. And you can artificially hit Duke with the 200 points of prestige, and then once you lose or use up your legitimacy, you don't actually drop rank. So once you hit Duke, you will stay Duke, and you will enjoy the 8 points of legitimacy every turn from that point. So jump starting your rank up through legitimacy is going to be a very solid strategy for Yuan Shu players moving forward, and then you have a nice steady legitimacy gain throughout your game afterward. So pretty good strategy for him opening up here. So I wouldn't say he got nerfed with the income. These changes are definitely pretty good for Yuan Shu players, and I know there are a bunch of you out there. And next up we have his brother, Yuan Shao. Alrighty, we are now with Yuan Shao here in the 190 start, and he got quite a few changes as well. So starting on the character, if you guys remember, he used to have a bonus to the recruitment cost for his captain retinues, and we spammed those for dominating the whole map early on. Now that strategy is going to be modified a little bit. So Yuan Shao is getting promoted to be a good commander in the game. Preeminent commander is his title. So to make him feel like a good commander, you get plus 100% to reinforcement range. This was kind of previously on Gongsun Zan, who had 50% to reinforcement range, but that's gone from Gongsun Zan now. Now it's on Yuan Shao with 100%, which is really big because it doubles your circle radius. You can team up and swarm enemies, which is still a valid strategy based on this, but it's just not going to be cost-based. What's going to be cheaper for you is polearm infantry. So that plays into the fact that Z units are your faction unique unit. You also get plus 3 starting rank on them. So you get cheaper units for your generals to recruit, not for the cheaper captain retinue. Now, if you thought the captain retinue spam strategy is gone, it's not, because if you come over here to lineage, you see that at base level, you still have 25% upkeep cost for captain retinues. And if you move up, it goes to 50, and then all the way to 75, which is ridiculous. Because if you can maintain lineage, and you have 75% of recruitment upkeep cost discount for captain retinues, and then you get Zhang Ba, who is on the map to your south. Zhang Ba is the bandit non-playable character in this area. If you could get him, he has a 25% discount to captain retinues on his character. Make him your heir prime minister, one of those roles, and if you maintain honorable, that's free captain retinues. That's insane. You can max out your army slots, right? If you have late game 20 army slots, send out 1 general and 2 captain retinues, 100% reinforcement range, Yuan Shao is going to ruin your day. Imagine how much oppression that would be. Seeing like 10 armies of captain retinues running down, and they're free. And 10% replenishment. And the characters that's running them is getting 20% character salary reduction. Yuan Shao is going to be pretty scary. And it's nice to see, because he is a very dominant force with a lot of armies at the time. It's just unfortunate he lost to Cao Cao. But that's enough for Yuan Shao now. We can move on to Ma Teng. Alrighty, now we have moved out west, and for Ma Teng here, the focus is on his Teng units, of course, and we can see that from his new background bonus. He still has the 100% income to Silk and Spice, don't worry. The melee damage for cavalry is up from 10 to 15, so that's a nice boost. And most importantly, you now have 20% recruitment and upkeep cost discount for all town units, not just the cavalry, all the town infantry as well, and it's to recruitment and upkeep. Used to be just 10% to upkeep. So this is a big buff, and it's gonna make your playstyle with the town units a lot more friendlier. And I wonder if this change is also applied to his son, who we can't see in this starting date. I don't even think he comes of age. He comes of age in 194. We'll take a peek a bit later, but if that is the case, then you get quite a big bonus to the upkeep cost and recruitment cost for the town units overall. And if we jump to a settlement, which we don't have, but we can still see the new building. So previously it was food, which is still the same, but now there's some bonuses to cavalry starting rank and unit replenishment. So you can see at level 1 here, you're already getting +1 rank for cavalry recruit, as well as 2% replenishment. And this will boost all the way to +3 starting rank for cavalry recruit and 10% replenishment. And I'm assuming local commandery, when it doesn't say it's always local commandery. And that's quite nice. So this might be a worthwhile building given that you have very little food to start out with. And you can easily get this up without reforms to tier 3. That's when you get +2 rank as well as 6%. And this building always unlocks your town infantry troops, as you can see on the bottom. So it's worth building in the first place. And so this is definitely something for you to consider now. And that's going to be Ma Teng's faction. We're going to jump to 194 real quick just to see if the bonus is also on his son. Alrighty, very quickly, we're in 194. Our son has come of age and we are getting the same old 10% upkeep for Teng units. So Ma Chao didn't get changed, Ma Teng got changed. So a little bit of a shame, but that's probably fine. One day Ma Chao will become his own faction leader and maybe we'll see a boost for him at that time. But right now he's still the same old Ma Chao that we know from before. And let's move on to Tao Qian. Alrighty, we're here with Tao Qian, who is another free LC leader that was added in a bit back during Mandate of Heaven. And he got quite a bit of change to his faction. He got buffed a lot. So first things first, on the character himself, the background bonus is now +2 administrator positions, +2 assignment positions, and +5% replenishment for garrison. So these are huge changes. 2 additional administrator is already really strong, and also 2 assignments, and you get these at the start of the game, which is pretty amazing. And the garrison replenishment is okay. It kind of makes sense because your faction unique unit, the territorial spearmen and territorial archers, are automatically added into your garrison, so it makes sense for that to be a focus there. And there's also been a change where the recruitment requirement for these are both dropped to level 1 because of how bad the unit is. So now all your troops can recruit these at level 1 instead of waiting to level 3 to not recruit them. But that's pretty much the general change for Tao Qian. You're still the defensive build tall playstyle, and this kind of reinforced that. Now the thing that's holding back from this being super broken is his age, which I know with timeless mode it's not a thing anymore. You can actually keep him alive forever and enjoy this bonus forever, even if you don't have him as your starting faction, and you could just get him added into your faction by confederating or destroying his faction and recruiting him and so forth. Because his previous bonus is reduce corruption by 10% and +2 public order. Compare that to this. This is very strong. So for those of you who want to give him a try but was kind of scared because he had terrible units and not worthy bonuses, and I think there was that meme where you can try to get him killed and have Lady Me as your faction leader on turn 1. So now you might want to play him, because keeping him alive and using his extra administrator and assignment slot is going to be very, very strong for his faction, at least economically. So build tall, play defensive, kind of gives him kind of a play style, whereas before it was already kind of hard to control his population and he didn't have a very defined background bonus, and now we have that. And talking about old man who might die early, we're going to talk about Liu Biao next. Alrighty, we're with Liu Biao here in the 190 start, and from this face we can already see a couple of changes, because one of the biggest change on Liu Biao is that his background bonus. Look at all the unhappy faces. Liu Biao's old background bonus gave you 10 points of satisfaction, which counteracts all legendary difficulty modifier for satisfaction, which was wonderful, and you also get +2 public order. His new bonus, however, gives you a character salary discount 20%, a recruitment cost discount for polearm infantry of 20%. This is nice because infantry Jian is actually quite strong, and getting them at 1/5 discount is going to be wonderful. You also get 50% diplomatic income from tributaries, so this is going to apply to your vassals. That's going to be very good, and I assume this will also apply for subjects when you become an empire in the future. So that's also a nice bonus to have. You're going to make a lot more money and also save a bunch of money with Liu Biao now, but the problem is keeping them happy is going to be difficult now that you lost the 10 points of satisfaction. Now, of course, if you're not playing on legendary difficulty, it's not going to hurt you as much, but for legendary difficulty players, it's going to be very hard to balance this roster of very angry generals at the beginning. Now, of course, you have court positions still, and you can keep these. So like Gongsun Zan's change, where you can keep the inspector when you become an emperor, you will continue to keep the student, scholar, and tutor once you become an emperor as well. So that's also a nice change, and there's 3 additional positions for you to keep people happy. I guess that might be the strategy, and you know, you just throw them in one of these positions and they will be much happier. So that's kind of the balance changes for Liu Biao. Nothing changed. He doesn't have any different buildings to change, and his governance is still the same. So let's move on to Lu Zhi. Alrighty, we're with Lu Zhi in 182, and his changes are very minor. We're moving on to the very small changes now. Now previously his bonus, which is still here. This is not updated yet. So this is in fact still an early access build, so I guess the mandate of heaven changes haven't been applied. I guess we have to put a ticket in, but you get 10% character experience, which honestly, it's a generic officer bonus. You have this on certain generic strategists as a bonus. It's not good. His new bonus is going to be increase all unit starting rank by +2 and increase morale by +6. So just a little bit of spice on top, and we don't even get to see it here, which is a bit unfortunate. But that is the change we're going to have on Lu Zhi moving forward. And then we're going to talk about another strategist leader in Rong. Alrighty, we're with Rong now, back in Beihai. And what we have is also a very minor change, and it's basically just on his character. So previously we had 5k population growth and 50% trade influence. Now there's a reinforcement theme to play crossbow units, so 15% recruitment cost discount. Very straightforward, very simple. And crossbows, like I said, got buffed back up. So now you have 250 range for Fury of Beihai and 250 range for Thunder of Jian. So crossbow is back, and range in general has been slightly buffed against cavalry as well. So they're going to make them a little bit more useful. And let's move on. We have Zhang Yan, the bandit of the Black Mountains, next. Alrighty, we're back in the Black Mountains, and his changes are actually quite nice for Zhang Yan this time. So his previous bonus on his character, if we take a look, used to be ignore force penalties, which is still there. And then you also get 25% post-battle loot, and that's been increased to 50% now. And in addition, all Black Mountain units start out with +3 rank, and you also get +5% chance to ambushing. So these are all very nice bonuses. And speaking of ambushing, which is a big part of Zhang Yan's playstyle, ambush has finally been patched up, where Fire will now work. So previously, Fire Will just does not work, and your unit never acquires target by themselves. They didn't completely fix it, but what they did is they found a way to bypass the bug, and now what happens is at start of the battle, all your range unit will have their Fire Will turned off. So they will enter the ambush with that off. You can click them on during the deployment phase, and then they would Fire Will like normal. So that means you can actually fight ambush battle with a range composition army now. That's a very welcome change, and perhaps Zhang Yan's aggressive ambush battles on offense might come into play much more handily now. And the 50% boost to post-battle loot versus the 25%, obviously a great change. And since he has 50%, I'm wondering if Zhuo should have 50% as well, because it does say 50% in the patch note. Maybe it just didn't get updated in game, and we just have to complain about it a little bit. So that's about it. We do want to look at the bandit network real quick, because obviously this needed to be changed with some of these new counties or new commanderies being added into the game. So Wu Huan of Liaodong is now a new commander that didn't exist before, so you get new bonuses added in. Pengcheng and Xiapi are now separate commanderies, so we get 2 reforms here with different bonuses. And the Nanman faction, this is what probably everyone wants to see. They all have their own unique reform now on the bandit network tree, and you get some Nanman units. And the Nanman units, sadly, are not the elephant unit. And I think there's a good reason for this, because you can get these reforms even if you don't have the DLC for the Furious Wild. So if you want to play tigers and elephants, you're going to need the Furious Wild DLC. You could get an elephant mount in your games, even if you don't get the DLC, because you could go fight them and take their mount, but you can never recruit their units unless you play as one of the Nanman factions. So that's going to be the theme here. You do get a couple slingers, fire archers, javelin troops. So you still get kind of the unique flavored range units that you normally wouldn't see, but no tigers and elephants for you, not through the reform tree here. So that's pretty much the big change here for Zhang Yan, and we're going to move on to his counterpart in the Black Mountains in Zheng Jiang. Alrighty, and we're loaded up with Zheng Jiang here, also on 190, and there are two changes to her. One's on her character background, and the key difference here is we now have 100 points of faction support, which means whatever we conquer will immediately like us. This is very similar to Liu Bei. So apparently we're the lovable bandits by the people. And we also get 15% all damage for all forces when attacking. This is a bonus that I have never seen before in the game. This is a very different wording, and it just seems like we do better when we're on the offense, and that's the playstyle for Zheng Jiang. You still get the 50% diplomatic income from tributary, so this will apply to vassals, your tribute system, as well as the empire system, which will make her definitely a great addition to your court if you plan to create empires, which are now more lucrative because you give back less money. You do take in less money, but the multiplier still applies and you give back less, and you can make a ton of money if you have characters like this in your court. So that also applies to who we saw. There was someone else earlier with 50%. I think it's Liu Biao. So both of these characters would apply that bonus. And aside from that, it's pretty much infamy, similar to Dong Zhuo's intimidation. At top level, when you're legendary, not only are your troops unbreakable, which was there before, they also would cause scare. So that is going to be very useful in terms of morale hits. And unbreakable starts out at dreaded now. Maybe it always started out dreaded, I think. But now at legendary, we get scare on top of that. So that's going to help you win a few more battles as well. So that's pretty much it with Zheng Jiang, and we're going to move on to Yan Baihu down south. Alrighty, we're here with Yan Baihu, and he got some big changes. So before, he had a very basic background bonus of 5% replenishment boost. Now it's 15% discount to resource settlement, so counties, which plays into the bandit playstyle perfectly, but they weren't expensive to begin with, so this is not going to be a big cost saver, but it's just going to help you build up a little easier. And also a lot of the bandit counties in the south now starts out at tier 1, whereas they were abandoned before, sort of. It was not like abandoned that you had to colonize them, but once you took them over, you notice that the building level started out at 0. Now they will start out at 1. You also get +3 rank to all white tiger unit or your faction unique unit, and that's actually really strong, especially if we consider the changes to ambush. Because let's just take a look at what our faction unique unit, one of our units, will do for us. Do we have? I think we might. We don't have any on us. That's a bit unfortunate. I don't know why. Okay, I guess we could recruit them if we get the right reform tree. But basically, there was a archer unit for Yan Baihu that has snipe and stalk. So you can hide in any terrain and you can stay hidden when you shoot. And you have poison arrow on those guys. So imagine an ambush fight now where fire will works. Your archers will be sniping from the forest surrounding the enemy troop with poison arrows and regular arrows without the enemy ever seeing them, because you have snipe. So technically you can unload your damage on unsuspecting ambushes and you can wipe them out that way. Just keep a general in the front so the enemy AI have someone they can see, so they're not going to magically see all your invisible units in the forest. That's definitely a strategy I feel like will be very good on Yan Baihu in general. And we definitely tried that type of sniping strategy when I played Yan Baihu when he first launched on the Let's Play. We kind of kept them where the reinforcement army is. We kind of made a big circle, and as they came in, we just shot them up and no one even saw us. And that was basically going to be the strategy you can pull off with all sorts of ambush fights now. So that's nice. And then moving on, we have all the 190 yellow turbans, and that's going to wrap things up for us. Alright, and the first of these yellow turbans in 190 that we'll look at is Huang Shao. And Huang Shao's main changes are on his background. So now you have faction-wide stock. That is pretty cool. It's a range-focused faction, so now they're going to give all your units stock so you can remain hidden on any terrain. And then you also have 15% recruitment cost for range units in general, so that kind of reinforces that playstyle. And since we are a scholar character, we get the 10% character experience faction-wide as well to help you guys level up. So these are all nice, and I kind of like the wording changes for Lord of Virtue or Faction Leader, which is pretty consistent with the Yellow Turbans instead of seeing these Prime Minister, AR, and Faction Leader roles. So that's pretty much the change for Huang Shao, and we're going to move on to Gongdu. Alrighty, and now we're with Gongdu over here, which once again just has a few changes to his background bonus. It's going to reinforce the fact that he's the more military version of the three, and he's going to get 20% recruitment cost discount for polearm. And as you can see the trend here, it's going to be a lot of recruitment cost discount. They took away a lot of the upkeep cost discount. You also get 15% armor for all spear units, which is his faction unique unit type, or not unique, but the starting version of his late game unit. Each of these start out with one of the late game unit unlocked for free at the beginning. And you also get 50% bonus to post-battle loot, which reinforces his playstyle because he does have some bonus with buildings that give him this as well. And obviously Yellow Turbans have a skill that gives this as well. So this would all combine together quite nicely for some nice battle income. And that's pretty much it with Gongdu. And lastly, we have He Yi. Alrighty, and the final faction that received a change to the background is He Yi, leader of the people. And we had a bandit that has 100 points to faction support. We have a regular Han character with 100 points to faction support. And now we have a yellow turban character with 100 points to faction support. The 4k population growth and 15 melee evasion is very similar to his old bonus. The 4k is exactly the same. The 15 points of melee evasion is 5 points higher than what it was before. So a small boost there. But main change is the faction support of the land you conquer. People is just going to love you since you are leader of the people. And that's going to wrap up all the balance changes. There is still one minor campaign change that I'm going to show in game. So we're going to jump ahead to Emperor Liu Hong here real quick. Alrighty, we're in the 182 start. And the main thing that was changed for Liu Hong is that one, we start out with Shixie as well. I kind of showcased this when we did the map overview. We have Shixie in our court. I believe he is probably going to go down south and spawn his own faction as we move towards the 189. Similar to how Rong and Yuan Shao does the same thing. As a member of our court, he also supports the bureaucrats, I believe, which is a bummer. Yep, but can't do much about that. And for all the new characters that were added in for A World Betrayed, they are all assigned one of these 3 faction supports for Liu Hong as well, so that's a nice bug fix. And the main difference is we start out with a lot less money. We have 45k officially at the start. It burned through some of that. 44 here. The patch note said 45. Previously it's 100k, so a big change. But the main reason why this is happening is because the tributaries are changed. So you can see now we're getting 5.4k tributaries. That's the income we're getting from all the subject members. And then we're redistributing 1.3k back. So that's how subjects and emperors work. And they changed this now so that you get slightly less money from tributaries, but you pay back a lot less money, so you can actually keep most of the income. So that's one of the biggest changes for Liu Hong. And if you still use our suicidal army strategy that was outlined in our Liu Hong Let's Play, you can get this income under control on turn 1 without any issues, and then you'll be enjoying a nice bank of 44k, so I think it's fair, or else you'll be enjoying a nice bank of 100k, which might be a bit too extreme. So that wraps up everything we have to show in game, and we're going to jump back to the patch note and wrap things up with a lot of the different bug fixes that were added into the game. So see you guys there. Alrighty, that was definitely a lot longer than I wanted it to be, but that's everyone. Huge changes in this patch. And then we have some changes we also talked about at the end. The Emperor's income got dropped. We talked about that at the end of our balance changes. And then the faction-wide food surplus bonus. So this was something that was always in the game, something that we don't usually notice. When you have a food surplus, you get a bit of bonus. It's not huge, but the bonus wasn't consistent from difficulty levels. It's just a modification to reserve amounts. So it's not going to be huge. You get a little bit extra peasantry income, you get a little bit extra reserve. And now they modify it so it's consistent in that you get higher amounts in easy and you get a lower amount in legendary. That's pretty much the big change. And the penalty from having negative global food, which is usually very huge, attrition, 35 points of public water, that part stayed the same. And then Bandit Network, we kind of talked about this in the balance changes. There are some new ones added for the new commanderies that are added in the game, so you get some new bonuses from them. We also seen the new units, so I'm not going to waste too much time here. And then for some of the existing nodes that had commandery changes, that's also going to be modified. Some of the commandery that has been renamed, so some of the new reforms in the game need to have new names and new things. That's basically what this part's talking about. And for those of you who are going to play the bandit factions, definitely should check this out in greater detail. Nothing major. And now we move on to some major changes. Battles. So ambush, we talked about this. is being changed. So now we can actually use our range units effectively in ambush fight, and that's going to open up a lot of options. Ambush is a very strong mechanic in the game, and I stayed away from it mostly because I like to play range armies, and range armies just does not work well in ambush battles. Well, now they are going to work very well, and if you have snipe, they're going to work extremely well. So that's something to keep your eye out for as you might adapt to this new patch. Units, crossbows has received a buff. It has reversed a lot of the nerfs that they have taken in patch 1.5. It's not a complete reversal. Used to be crossbow are all 250 range. Now the basic crossbows are 220 and the elite versions are 250. And elite versions are the faction unique versions, the imperial units, those are 250. And 220 is the base version. And that's going to be pretty good. It's going to outrange standard archers once again. It's going to bring back crossbow meta. And crossbows are always been really strong with the armor piercing damage. So even on the nerf range, they were still some unit you could consider. And now we have some real competition for Onyx Dragons. And speaking of ranged buffs, we also get a slight increase to missile bonus against cavalry from 45 to 52. So now your missile unit's going to be a bit stronger against cavalry. And this was probably the big change from the last patch, given that melee cavalry really countered range units really hard. 50% missile resistant plus your high range block chance. Now this is going to soften that bonus up a little bit. But melee cavalry is still going to be your best bet to absorb arrows from range units. And speaking of cavalry, the main changes here are just some visual and stat changes to match things up. Heavy Tiger and Leopard, as well as Tiger and Leopard, all receives an armor boost because visually they look like they have a lot of armor, but in game they don't. This has been a very common complaint on the comment section in my channel, and it's glad that CA has actually changed this. And the cost has also been reduced, and we talked about this a little bit in the total balance changes, and the ratio is still the same. It's still about 3.75 between the upkeep cost and the recruitment cost. They've just been lowered by quite a bit for both of these units, and it's going to make both of these more accessible. You're going to be able to feature this in your total army compositions a lot easier at this cost level. And then the new Juggernaut unit. These things are pretty dramatic. They're very strong. They're very slow firing, and they're very slow, very low range, so they're very situational. Now, I could see these being good in armies where you don't mind killing your own units, because what you kind of want to happen is to have maybe a line of Z militias in front just to lock down the enemy unit, and then you just have these guys behind manual fire into that crowd. You will kill some of your guys, but you'll be able to wipe out more expensive and better enemy unit. That's probably the most effective way to use them on open field. In siege battles, if you're on defense, keeping them at the gate, like we did during our gate battle feature, is probably the best way to use these, as they will eliminate anything trying to get in from a small gap, because they hurt a lot. And then we have some UI changes. Load save performance has been improved, and they will warn you if you're loading a save from a previous version because of the new map changes. A lot of the events and missions will now have faction portrait and flags added in to help clarify where these events are happening, so you can know where on the map this is happening and where you had to go do things. Custom battles have been changed a little bit. This is a lock state for not owned characters. So basically this is saying if you're trying to play a custom battle, if you don't have the DLC, you don't have the character on lock and you can't use it, they will clearly state why you can't use these characters in the custom battle. Accessibility, there's new colors for most of the flags in the game, and they've been all modified for consistency. And apparently now you can do custom color profiles in-game so that you can change them to your liking. Campaign, you can now have timeless mode. And in this mode, age and dates are replaced with showing turns alive or turns progressed. So you'll still see how long you had the character or how long this character has been alive, but you won't see an age, and they won't be dying from old age. They can still die from battle. And children will show age until they come of age. So you kind of know how long till they come of age right away when you take a look at them. And then once they come of age, the age will become turns alive. And once again, they will not die from old age. There's a very nice UI change to deal negotiations for quick deals. You can now see the diplomatic value before selecting into a quick deal. So previously you know that it was green, but you don't know how green it was. Now you can see it before you click into it. So that's a nice change. And missions have building chains as objectives will now show the corresponding icon to just clarify what your objectives are. And missions that have faction target will also show flag and leaders more clearly. So these are helping players out who are not so familiar with the buildings and characters on the game. And you can kind of see a mission and know what you need to do. And next up, everyone's favorite bug changes. So a lot of bugs got fixed. Fixed the crash when clicking on the benchmark, or changing hotkeys when playing in language like Chinese and Korean. Fixed crash that could happen in siege battle involving large armies, which we have experienced quite a few times. There's quite a few siege battles that has just crashed in the middle of that I had to skip. And diplomacy, fixed issue where Yellow Turban faction did not have access to the right diplomatic options when they reached the ascended rank. Gives you a little bit more playstyle in the late game, even though you might not need it. It's a nice option to have that was originally designed in, but you just couldn't do it. Form Empire diplomacy option tooltip now correctly state it requires a certain faction rank. Fixed issue where it's not possible to make peace in an alliance war after empire is dissolved. That's a big one. Fixed issue where accepting a mercenary contract and then completing it on the same turn. Had the UI for mercenary contract remaining at the top of the screen. Minor issue. Fixed issue where issuing a failed ultimatum resulted in 2 war deals being signed. Also just a display issue. It didn't actually change gameplay. And fixed issue where Yuan Shao's diplomacy deal component to transition an alliance and coalition to an emperor could propose multiple times. Fixed issue where Zheng Jiang signing a tribute deal to end a war did not sign peace with the target's vassal. That's awkward. So it's nice that they changed that. I never played Zheng Jiang, so did not experience this firsthand, but I can imagine that being very bad. And then there was an issue where it's possible to do war coordination with faction that had been kicked from or left an empire. That's interesting. Fixed issue where it's possible to propose request ally support treaty without a majority vote. Oh, interesting. It led to an attitude penalty but no war. That sucks. So you pushed it through even though you're not allowed to push it through, and then you get hit with a penalty and they also don't get the war. So they fixed that. Required faction rank in order to make coalition, military alliance, and vassalage are now shown in faction rank to make things more clear. Coalition to alliance diplomacy option was unlocked before you had access to alliance. Ouch. Okay, so now you have to rank up to get that alliance upgrade. And fixed issue where it was possible to trade more auxiliaries than the player actually had. Interesting. Never ran into that bug. And then you had characters who could join Yellow Turbans like Yuan Yi being fixed. Sun Jian missing the Imperial Jade seal in multiplayer, so now you can play with a buddy and have that seal. Fixed issue where new characters added a world betrayed did not have any of the 3 court factions for Liu Hong. We talked about this already. Zhou Yu was spawning twice. Zhou Tai was spawning incorrectly because his mission to spawn, if you're interested, is you have to fight 4 battles with Sun Ce. And after the 4th battle, he spawns. And the issue is if you save the game and reload the game, that counter resets. So if you never fight 4 battles in one playthrough, Zhou Tai would never spawn, and if his spawn timer times out for Sun Ce, he can go to another faction. That's why sometimes you wouldn't see him. And then you also have these duplicate spawns, Lu Meng, Gan Ning, Gong Du, Yue Jin, Xiahou Dun, and now the Tail Sister ability works and the Chu Zhang ability work. They did not work before. Poison shots now appear for the right archers in custom battle for the bandits, and Guan Yu and Zhang Fei will no longer duplicate themselves in Mandate of Heaven as well. And there's over 100 errors and logic issues with the setup of various events from all DLCs, so I think we get smoother event triggers. And then we have the underlying system behind character creation more stable, so this is about random characters being generated in games. And then AI Han factions able to recruit Yellow Turban characters post-battle. That got fixed. And also, Yellow Turbans no longer can grant independence to administrators. And faction icon correctly again for provincial capitals on provincial panel. Fixed issue where public order effect from troubled and unhappy were the wrong way round. Oh, okay. So previously they weren't being applied. They were actually giving a bonus. And the effects of give campaign movement range in own territory were not applied correctly. These have been replaced with bonus to campaign movement speed. Okay, so basically they won't phrase it like own territory, because I think that check might be hard, so they're just going to give you flat movement speed. We talked about the legitimacy change. This is a big one. This makes Yuan Shu a lot stronger. And then Ma Teng had a wrong mission issue where it said to survive till autumn, but then it always triggers during spring, so now it's just going to say spring. And then trading with a high empire becomes more stable economy-wise during the first few turns. Don't actually know what this means, but I assume that's a good thing. And then bugs with Shi Xie and Huang Zu was unable to construct the temple buildings for AI factions. Okay, minor thing. 194 World Betrayed, that was causing some bandit resource settlement to be abandoned. We talked about this. They were showing as, a bandit building, but if you go there, the building's level 0, and you have to build that from the ground up. It did make some other campaigns easier. You could potentially migrate to the south and start taking these for free. Now you have to actually fight. That's a good fix. It should be this way. Some ancillaries which should have been traded was untradeable in diplomacy. That's been fixed. Yeah, there were some that's unequipable, and that should be fixed too, hopefully. And then governor factions can no longer become emperor. That was a very common bug. I think it was because no other AI player became emperor first, so you apparently could do it. Now you can't, so that's good. And Liu Chong and Liu Zhi's achievement for their trophy and books now spawn correctly. And then there are some issue with the unique armor auxiliary being spawned incorrectly. That's been fixed. And there's also a bug where you could replenishment on river during double time. Now you can't do that. And then Liu Chong's builds your future mission would stay instead of being cancelled out if you ranked up too quickly. And Gongsun Zan fixed his inspector position, and Liu Biao fixed his scholar tutor positions. And administrator positions that were lost when you became a king and emperor is also fixed. So you had to reassign all your administrators after you became emperor. Now you don't have to do that. Replenishment supply assignment was not being unlocked correctly. Invoke council faction was being locked at the correct faction level. I don't think I ran into this, but apparently now it's better. Tool manufacturing building was calculating its corruption adjacency bonuses wrong, and Yellow Turban diplomatic being relocked after gaining them while progression level if you use your save and reload. So another save and load bug, and also the books for Liu Zhi not unlocking. Zhuo would die immediately after hiring Diao Chai in multiply campaigns. Oh gosh. Well, that's been fixed. Because now you have the option to hire her and not take her and then not die. UI fixes, family tree, when your family tree becomes too large, lots of white spaces when you scroll. It's been fixed. Courts, where you assign character to position previous preview character, will sometime appear behind the current preview character. So like an overlap of the UI. And then rank icon numbers in 8 Princes campaign went in the wrong order. Wow. It's been, what, a year? And no one really noticed this one, I guess. Zhoutai's icon matches the active ability now, whereas it was passive. And this is the same thing. It's so bad they had to say it twice. Well, I guess this is for in the wrong order and not matchup crack. This is the same thing, worded differently. Icons being in the wrong place for commander panels. Hitting the escape key on core panel will often open the escape option. Oh, okay, so it jumps 2 menus, so it double escapes. Clicking the close button in diplomacy often would not close the panel and would act like a cancel button. Okay, so this is clicking one less time. Fixing negative faction support effect weren't showing up in occupation option after a siege. Character stat on information panel weren't always updated when hovering over in many successions. Okay, so like timeout. Character stat on character detail panel wouldn't always update when changing equipment. And Steam avatar and multiplayer battle lobbies being fixed for portraits. Increased width of name field. Okay, I think this is because the non-man characters with 4 character names are going to be pretty long. Yellow Turban text bleeding on the campaign map tool tip in Spanish. And then we also have military supply icons being added in. This is all very visual changes. Some of the, text bleeding, wrong icon positions, pretty much all minor stuff. And then for battles, we have Yellow Turban units being invincible when they're healing. So this was the thing where you had like this one unit standing there ruining your whole battle and you had to restart. And this is where healing ability on Zhoutai would make you continue to bounce back from a duel. After you get beheaded, you'll still get back up and fight because your health is still ticking up all the time. That's been fixed. And you also have unbreakable characters that were routing incorrectly, and that's been fixed as well. So that finally wraps up this patch rundown. It's rather long. Sorry about it. I'll try to put the timestamp in the right places so you can access the information you want to see. And hope you guys enjoy this one. And see you next time. Bye.